Keith Reed, your 12th Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services. So I want to thank you for being here today and more importantly for doing your civic duty and being involved in Tiger Bay and in all the different activities that you have across the county and across the city. And everyone here, I'm used to being involved in different types of dens and attacks, and so being here at Tiger Bay and to the Lions and Tigers Den, as a triple gator, I'm used to having to go into the Tigers Den and having to fight. So I appreciate this opportunity today, and more importantly that you are not partisan. The fact is that you want to hear from all of your elected officials and want to hear what they have to say, regardless of partisan politics. So I really do commend what you all do and what you bring to the table, and more importantly, what you do for your communities. I am the first female ever elected to commissioner, so that. I'm also the first Jewish female to serve on the Florida cabinet. And I feel that I was elected because I have a different vision, a different goal for the Department of Agriculture, and a different vision allowed me to get here. And I believe that the people of the state of Florida are the ones who saw that they wanted to change, they wanted something different. And so I take that responsibility very seriously, understanding that I don't come from traditional agriculture, but have spent not only time while campaigning, but the first 160 days of my office, meeting with all the different stakeholders across the state to hear what their needs are, what their interests are. And I've said, I was a 15-year practicing attorney and 8 years doing government consulting back and forth into Tallahassee. And I said, all I'm doing is changing my client. Still the advocate and best voice for the people that I represent, and now it's the state of Florida and the consumers and the Agriculture Commission. So I know that I don't walk in the same boots as my predecessors, and I'm okay with that because it gives me an opportunity to go outside the box and to really get a new perspective on things. So that's exactly what we're doing here, because the people of the state of Florida wanted a new voice. We may know that agriculture is the second largest economic driver of our state. 47,000 commercial farms and ranches, creating $132 billion in economic impact. Florida's farmers and producers and ranchers support over 2 million jobs, exporting over $4 billion in agricultural products to 164 countries across the world, and raise over 1 million in cattle, and are critical to feeding our families, to feeding our neighbors, and feeding the world, quite frankly. Here in Hillsborough County, there's more than 180,000 people that work in agriculture. That's 20% of your community. Statistically, that means 2 out of each of you here are keeping the rest of us fed, and the food that you're eating on your plate, you're part of agriculture. But our agriculture producers, of course, are facing a lot of challenges in our between changing environment, impacts that have been that we see every single day, from increases in hurricanes and different impacts that we're seeing from international trade negotiations. I continue to be very vocal about the renegotiation of NAFTA, which is now USMCA, not creating a seasonal exemption for our farmers here in our state. But the future of our state and our nation depends on greatly our ability to produce the fresh, nutritious, and safe food. Our success and our children's success lies tied directly into the success of our farming community. Our department will continue to partner with our agriculture community with a forward-thinking approach that ensures that everyone has access to alternative crops and innovative technology. Innovation is everything. That's why in the coming weeks I'm going to appoint a new board that is going to be focusing on innovation and technology, making sure that the next generation has all of the same tools that the past has had. I just came back from a long trade mission in the state of Israel where I got to meet with 50 to 70 different types of companies over there that are seeing what innovation is doing. And so looking forward to bringing some of that new innovation and technology here into our state and making sure that the best practices are actually, in fact, the best practices. Innovation was the heart of why I went to the state of Israel, making sure that we are getting new technology to attack the citrus screening situation, water conservation, precision agriculture, hydroponics, drone technology, all the things that are really going to advance our state. I keep talking about the fact that I want the state of Florida to be the Silicon Valley of agriculture here in our state, and really believe that we have a unique opportunity to do that. But we also have key allies in agriculture across our state who are protecting our natural lands and our waterways for our generations to come. And so we have a unique opportunity to work together to change our environment and protect our climates. No state is more vulnerable to the climate changes than we are here in the state of Florida. And through our Department of Energy that is also housed inside the Department of Agriculture, we're looking into new collaborative approaches to increasing renewable energy production and mitigate some of those climate changes, ensuring Florida is doing its part to build a sustainable future and create new clean jobs. Combating the red tide and blue green algae, which I know you saw here in your community, has also been the forefront of a lot of the conversations that we've been having since taking office. And looking forward to working with myself, the Department of Environmental Protection, as well as the governor, to combat some of these issues that are facing our state. That's also why I appointed a brand new water policy director. He has already been hard at work, making sure that we're protecting our waterways and working with our agriculture community. So as we look forward, we also saw some things that we needed to fix, and that is some of the issues that we saw in our concealed weapons permitting process. Unfortunately, my predecessor allowed for 13 months background checks to not be done and completed. So I made a promise to the citizens of the state of Florida, which I have upheld and keep every single day, to make sure that every single person, all 2 million people who have applied for concealed weapons permits in the state, and who have them, have had a complete background check. And so when we took office, we also saw that it was taking 93 days for those background checks to be done. We had a statutory requirement of only 90. So already we came in with a big mission ahead of us. And so I'm happy to say that since taking office, we've cut the amount of time in half. So imagine that a Democrat. Everybody was so fearful that when a Democrat came into office that I was going to take everybody's guns. And so I made sure that we are doing it in an efficient and timely manner. We also have asked and got into the state's budget 25 new employees to make sure that we are continuing to get that stuff done in a timely manner. The safety of our citizens is the foremost, and so I take that responsibility very seriously. So the other priorities that we've seen, I was actually coming from a workshop down the street, is we created a hemp program here in our state of Florida. Hemp, I had a vision of being a new and innovative technology here, and it's going to be a completely reinvent the way that we see our economy. Not only is it going to help our farming community, give them another option, another alternative crop, but it also is going to be so much essential for our environment. It's going to be able to be an industrial revolution, a green economy, allowed to replace our plastics and our styrofoams and concrete and hempcrete. The things that we can do with hemp is 25,000 to 35,000 known usages today. And the amount of feedback and response that we've received from people all across the state, we had about 300 plus people at the workshop today, about the same amount yesterday, and the diversity that we saw from farmers to people in the bigger and smaller side of the agriculture community, to entrepreneurs, to investors, so people that were coming in from out of our state. Is this really going to be a $20 to $30 billion industry? And really looking forward to Florida being at the forefront of this new technology to create these kinds of products and byproducts, not only ship them across the entire country, but the entire state. So we have a lot of great things that we are looking forward to doing inside the Department of Agriculture. One of the other things that we have been focusing a lot on is not just the hemp side, but also the medical marijuana side. It was one of the things that I campaigned on, that I feel that the state of Florida had not listened to the will of the people. 72% of us voted for medical marijuana, and every step along the way, the legislature and the past governor stood in the way of the will of the people. So we are fighting every single day. We created a task force about 2 weeks ago to travel the state, to hear from patients, to hear from doctors and providers, and the license holders, the farmers, to see how we can't move that program forward. And the same thing is on Amendment 4. We saw Amendment 4, again, was supported overwhelmingly, and I have, again, always supported, as a past public defender, that when somebody has paid their time in debt to society, they have a right to be put back in society, and voting is essential. It is a constitutional right and the best way that democracy works. It's the only way democracy works, when we actually get the people to the ballot box and hearing their voices. Again, I am just so delighted to be here with you today and look forward to the partnership here in Hillsborough County as we move forward to the next 4 years of my administration. So thank you again for your time today, and look forward to your questions.
We are, as we said, 30 seconds. We're going to give you a minute on responses, and we are going to try and get to as many as possible. I'm going to start with Ron here in the front.
Ron Weaver, thank you very much, Madam Commissioner. We're very honored that you're here. Over the last 15 or 20 years, agricultural interests have received occasional Florida help with respect to permitting and the like. What are some of the ways that our regulations with respect to farmers can be considered more balanced with respect to the way we regulate our farmers and their property and their water and the like, as far as regulating farmers?
Yeah, so, what's happened a lot during campaigns is there's a lot of finger pointing. Who's to blame for a lot of what's coming out into our waterways? And so I've said from day one, the farmers were here before the people were. As we continue to have an increase in population, a lot of the pollution that's going into our waterways is because of development. And so we need to have that appropriate balance, making sure that agriculture is preserving and protecting the land, which they do every single day, but also making sure that they're doing it in a way that's safe and better for the environment. And so new technologies and innovation is going to help that. Like I said, in Israel, I saw precision agriculture, ways to protect the environment, ways to conserve the water supplies. I said in the state of Israel, they have no water. They are a desert, and they've been able to create a fertile land out of nothing. And so using that technology and bringing that here to the state and saying, they have done it right. And now let's take that new technology, let's make sure that the best management practices that are here in the state are in fact the best management practices. If not, then we need to do some work together.
Thank you. Right here.
Nancy Granda. The Florida State Fairgrounds has always been very family friendly, and yet people with concealed weapons can bring their guns into the event. Wondering how many families know that. There's also alcohol served at the Florida State Fairgrounds. And we also are known for the highest rate of negligent gunfire in the country. So I was wondering what your feeling would be about making the Florida State Fairgrounds a gun-free zone.
So I was actually approached during my campaign about the same issue. And so I know that I just left our first board meeting with my new board, and those are one of the questions that we're going to be asking. And get feedback from the community, get feedback from the people that are bringing their guns into the property. And so those are some of the things that we're looking at. I want to make sure that we're providing a safe environment. From the board meeting just now, they specifically showed that their main target audience from this past year's fair was families, was targeting families with kids and making sure that it's providing an environment. And so we need to do a job internally to see where is that balance, making sure that we're not stepping on people's constitutional rights, but yet also making sure that we are protecting the people that are coming to the fair. So know that that's one of the issues that we're going to be charging this board to see what we need to be doing.
Justin.
Madam Commissioner. Hi. You're seeing...
Introduce yourself, please.
Justin Tiger. You're seeing glyphosate, Roundup, banned in a couple counties throughout Florida.
I'm sorry, I asked you what?
Glyphosate and Roundup, you're seeing it banned in a few places. Do you foresee anything at the state level coming as far as bans?
As far I can enjoy the
Bans on glyphosate or Roundup come from the state level.
banning of glyphosate.
Glyphosate, Roundup, weed killer.
Oh, weed. So some of the things as far, again, it's an environmental issue and trying to figure out, we are seeing a lot of that in local communities and seeing, we have an entire department that looks over the environmental aspects and a lot of the fertilizers and pesticides and seeing how we make sure we make that balance. And so we have been discussing internally too, and we've met with a lot of stakeholders, whether or not we should be putting forth legislation to do a statewide regulations or let the local governments handle it. So we are definitely looking into that to see what needs to be done, because the one thing we don't want is there to be one community you're doing one thing and another community you're doing something else. And if you are moving across county lines or you happen to be a licensed producer, what are you doing between the two counties? And so we are looking at making sure, again, that we have a balance and that we're protecting, because I do firmly believe that the homeowner has a huge responsibility on a lot of the waste that's going into our waterways. And so we need to make sure that we are teaching, and we have the same regulations for the farmers that we do for the homeowners, and to make sure that they realize that they have a part to play in a lot of this.
Thank you.
Hi, Elizabeth Corwin. A follow-up to your response to the Florida State Fairgrounds question. A lot of municipalities across the country have banned gun shows in their jurisdictions, and the Florida State Fairgrounds is under your jurisdiction. Can you foresee banning gun shows?
That's actually not something that has come up in any of the conversations. So it's definitely something that if we need to be looking at too. It's just not something that has come up at all. So it's something that if that's something that we need to be looking at too, I would definitely charge the board with looking into this.
Good afternoon, Alma Gonzalez, Commissioner. Welcome back to Tampa. I want to ask a question about your Israel trip. As the mother of a third-year rabbinical student in New York City, we were very optimistic about your visit to Israel, but it became very controversial. What did you guys do wrong, and how would you do it differently?
Well, I think that my part of the trade mission, so we went, so as you all know, that there was the governor's trade mission, had a delegation of about 110 people and a cabinet meeting that happened there. So that trade mission started on Sunday. We felt that it was imperative that we went ahead of time. So we got there on Thursday to meet with those 50 to 70 companies because I had a very specific mission. And I was to talk to as many startup ag tech businesses as possible to make sure that I got as much feedback from them and then be able to bring that stuff here to Florida, figure out how to do the partnership. So I felt absolutely that what we did and make sure that we had boots on the ground early to meet with those companies and the follow-ups now was perfect. So our part of the trade mission, we definitely felt that we maximized our time over there. And of course, as we do more trade missions, I think one of the biggest problems was the rest of the delegation, that they felt that they in fact were there to support the cabinet, but yet really didn't have an opportunity to have a lot of interaction with companies in Israel.
Hi, my name is Mike Diesel. I'm a recovering investigative reporter.
Can I be a recovering politician?
I have a theoretical question that it's going to become reality. Let's say there's a state worker. I've never one before. State worker, he's been on oxycodone or on Xanax. They get off, they get on medical marijuana. Everything's great. They have an accident, they're drug tested, they're fired because they're using a substance that the agency won't allow them to use. As a cabinet member, we push the cabinet to do something about it, and we ask Attorney General Moody to file an amicus either with the worker or with the agency.
So as you all know, I am a tremendous supporter for medical marijuana. Getting people off of oxy, getting them off of pharmaceutical drugs, giving them a better quality of life, it is paramount. Getting health insurance it is essential as well for access and for affordable access. The workers' comp issue is a problem. We're seeing that across the entire country, that when somebody, and it's not just even getting hurt on the job, but if they have a drug-free work zone and somebody is tested positive for medical marijuana and THC in their system, they're fired. And so we are, I have been pushing a lot, and I saw that Arizona just added language into their laws that says that an employer cannot fire somebody for testing positive. There needs to be a lot of research as far as how to make sure that you're not impaired when you're actually on the job. And I think a lot of it, unfortunately, right now, until that science gets created to do the drug test, to know if you smoked last night, you're not impaired the next day at your job. But you could have had 2 bottles of alcohol the night before, and then you're still going to job with no repercussions. So yes, I am going to be very vocal on this issue. Obviously there's going to be a balance between if you're supposed to be a school bus driver or heavy machinery and things of that nature, but for day-to-day operations of just doing your job, I'd rather you on medical marijuana at night than I want you on oxy that is throughout the day.
Hi, my name is Lynn Hurtak, and I actually grew up in Gainesville, two-time Gator. So, Alachua County offers a weekly farmers market where I could buy locally grown food and speak to the people who grew it. It was a huge benefit I didn't know I was going to miss until I moved here, where I was surprised to find that I cannot find locally grown food to purchase in this area. Our farmers markets are mainly resellers. What can your office do to encourage each county to develop real markets for locally grown food?
You're absolutely correct. And not only just allowing you to buy locally, but I have one of my biggest issues that I want to tackle is food deserts across our entire state. And the farmers markets and those types of outside the box opportunities for local growers, one, it encourages our agriculture community for economic reasons. But two, if our citizens don't have nutritious meals and they're not eating, then the wheel of health insurance and health care, you get obesity, you get diseases, you get diabetes, and it just has a huge impact on our health care system. So we are doing a lot talking to our local communities how to make sure our farm-to-table programs are actually farm-to-table programs, working with our local producers to kind of combat the food insecurity, because that is part of the equation, and working with our local governments to encourage not just farmers markets, but also encourage local gardens too, and community gardens as well. So we are talking a lot about this because it goes into my entire mission of attacking food insecurity.
Well, if I have to ask a question.
Yes, sir.
Joe,
I'm glad that you repaid your dues then.
Lake Okeechobee.
Am I talking about marijuana?
The agricultural industry is pouring in nutrients, pouring in crap into Lake Okeechobee. And then when it gets so much in it, they release it out to the shores. They're ruining our economy, they're ruining our environment, and they're driving tourists away. How do we stop Big Sugar from pouring their nutrients into Lake Okeechobee?
As I've said throughout the entire campaign, we have a collective mission to fix Lake Okeechobee. And that means everybody's sitting at the table. And it's not just agriculture. It is, again, development. It is, again, the septic tanks. It is across the board problems. This is something that hasn't happened overnight. But we are doing our job. Like I said, we have a new water policy director who's in place, who is going through and talking to all of our agriculture producers, making sure that they're on the best management programs. I also am trying to push sugar, both U.S. and crystals, to get into hemp and start transforming their land for those aspects, and making sure that they are, in fact, they're supposed to not be pumping anything back into Lake Okeechobee. That is part of a lawsuit that happened years ago, and making sure that we're holding their feet to the fire that is, in fact, not happening.
April Schiff. Commissioner, you were recently quoted on social media as saying, "Republicans want to take us back to a time long since past, a time when women couldn't vote, a time when we couldn't own property, a time when women were expected to sit down, shut up, and stay home barefoot and pregnant. They are not pro-life, they are anti-woman." Who are those Republicans you are referring to, please?
Well, as I've been very vocal, we have a representative from the Panhandle who believed that he was speaking to God. And God told him to file a piece of legislation to completely ban abortions. And that there was people that were supporting this legislation. I am obviously very anti that legislation. We saw Alabama. We've seen about 10 of our states across the country that have banned abortions or banned some form of abortions at early term. And so I've been very vocal that that is not the direction of our state. We have a Supreme Court case that dictates otherwise. And I will be continuing to be very vocal that if the state legislature, as I've said when I went up to Tallahassee as a Democrat working with a very Republican legislature and a cabinet, I said, look, I'm going to stay in my lane as much as possible. But you all start passing abortion bills, you're going to hear from me, and you're going to hear from every single female that I'm going to bus up to the state of Tallahassee, because we are not going back to a time when my grandmother and great-grandmother had to go across the border to get abortions with hangers. We are not going back to that time.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Adam Bantner. April, you stole my question there a little bit, so and you probably phrased it much better than I would have. But I'll ask you about, I guess, the gas pumps and your sticker on there. Now, I don't necessarily mind seeing your smiling face there. It's a good picture. You're a good-looking woman, but nonetheless, isn't it a little narcissistic to put your photo all over gas pumps all over the place?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. When I have campaigned, I made it very clear that as a 15-year practicing attorney, that my job was to protect the consumer. And that is exactly what I did. And to make sure that the consumers, we have this year alone have found over 300 skimmers all across the state of Florida by our sweeps. We found another 1,500 last year and 2,500. Each skimmer is valued at $1 million. It's $1 million of fraud on the consumer. And if my picture on the gas station pump is creating conversations like this to make sure that consumers understand that there is somebody accountable to them, then it works.
Good morning, Ari Fry. I'm a former Florida FFA state officer and I'm currently attending the University of Florida studying agriculture.
Go Gators.
Go Gators. My question is revolving around future agricultural techniques. So what are incentives for hydroponics, aquaponics? We know they work. How are we going to encourage farmers to use them to feed that estimated 10 billion by the year 2050, while also encouraging and educating our consumers?
Yep, you're absolutely correct. And that is exactly why I created an Innovation and Technology Committee. It is to work on, do we need to create new incentives inside of agriculture, making sure that agriculture understands that some of the things that we are hearing is that while we've had drip technology for years and decades, it's been cost prohibitive. And so some of the technologies that we saw when we went on a visit to Israel is that they've been able to reduce the cost for actually transforming all of this. And one of the other things that I said very clearly to the agriculture community is that I'm going to provide carrots. I'm going to provide carrots to you all, that we're going to work together. Don't force us, and not just us, just the Department of Agriculture, but also DEP, that if they're finding that they're not able to change all of their land over to the new types of technology that is better for the environment, more producing, because you're absolutely right. The statistics and the numbers that I have found of how we need to increase the amount of agricultural production across the entire world in the next 70 years is astronomical. So we aren't doing our job now to not only encourage people to stay in agriculture, this next generation like yourself to be involved in agriculture, we not only are going to lose our own national security if we are having to rely on other countries for our production. So it's going to be a partnership, and looking forward for our input that if we need to create some other kind of tax reliefs or other types of incentive programs, we are going to be doing that, and looking forward to my committee coming up with ideas of how to go forward with some of those spots.